So continuing on with exponents and variables, we're here in 1.8, the bottom of page 3 for the notes. And again, don't jump in before you see what the instructions tell you to do. Really get a handle on the relationship between what the vocabulary and the instructions say and what you are doing on the page. It will really pay off as you go through this term, getting ready for exams. Simplify each expression by removing parentheses and brackets, which is what we have been talking about in the sense that our two goals, when we talk about simplifying this term, that's our first goal, is we end up removing parentheses and brackets, removing any grouping symbols. Now, how are we going to do that? Sometimes distribution, sometimes order of operations. Going ahead and applying the multiplying or whatever's happening inside. So order of operations or distribution would be a way to remove the parentheses. And then our second thing we need to do before we can say, hey, we've completely simplified, is then to combine like terms. Exactly matching variables with the same exact matching exponents on those variables. So let's see what's happening here. Number 82, as these problems get bigger and there's more grouping symbols and stuff going on, treat it almost as if it were a story problem, because this expression, you know, we talk about particular expressions, things we say. This math problem is trying to tell us something. It's an expression. So read it out loud, see what it says here, and maybe even take a deep breath if you need to, and read it again, and then decide where you're going to start. So 4 times this quantity here, the bracket means we've got a bigger quantity with a smaller parentheses, a group inside. So bigger group, smaller group. 4 times this big group, and inside that is 6 times this small group of x minus 3, and then you add 1. Okay? So once you read it through, you can see, oh, I've got a group right here, an inside group. Order of operations says I need to take care of these parentheses first, but I don't know the value for x. They don't give me a value for x anywhere in these instructions. So I have to keep that value as an unknown, which means that I can't subtract 3 from it. I can't make this any simpler on the inside. So then I need to move outward a layer and see what I can do next. What can I do to start removing these parentheses? And in this case, that whole quantity is being multiplied by 6, so I start by distributing. And the reason why we start there is because we can't do anything else, can't go any further inside the parentheses. Okay? So why? Because we can't do anything else inside those parentheses. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just in green here write everything else out. I've got a 4 and a bracket. I've got a +1 and a bracket, and then in blue here I'll show the distribution. So it's going to be 6 times something. Now the question always comes up, do I bring the minus down or is it a plus? If it makes sense to you to just bring that sign straight down, do it. But then all you multiply is the number, 6 times 3. But if you're questioning what to do with that minus sign at this point, if you're unsure at all, then I need you to go ahead and make it x plus a -3. Okay, because then the plus is what comes down, and you for sure that negative stays with the 3 as you multiply it by the 6. So whatever makes the most sense to you. I'm going to go ahead and make it a plus and then 6 times the -3. So I'm going to put in x as our first multiplier and -3. So I'm going to go ahead and make that a plus a negative here when I distribute. It's not the only way to do it, but I just want to stay consistent with what I've been showing all term. Okay. So from there, then I see what I try to see if there's anything I can simplify inside this bigger group here. So I'm going to stick with the green here for the 4 and the brackets, and I'm going to stick with the +1 because I think I can do something with this multiplication here that's resulted. So I end up with 6 times x, which can be written as 6x. I've got 6 times a -3, that's going to be a -18. This plus just comes straight down. Okay, the negative comes from the 6 times the -13. Okay. Now I'm still got lots going on inside the brackets, so I'm seeing if there's anything else I can do to combine like terms. There's nothing with an x, so the 6x is going to stay right there for the moment. But I do have a negative 18 plus 1. I have two constants, two unchanging numbers that can be added together. So negative 18 plus 1, different signs because of the positive there that we don't see, but we understand it to be positive. We're adding a negative and a positive. So I subtract, I get 17, and I keep the sign of the bigger number here. So now I have 6x plus a negative 17 inside those brackets. If it helps you, you can now think of that bracket as a parentheses because there's nothing else grouping-wise going on inside of it, okay? So you can go ahead and just use parentheses here. You can have the 4 on the outside, and you can turn those into parentheses, and then 6x plus a negative 17, if it helps you, okay? You want to use the math to your advantage. It's a tool, it's a language that you can use to express what you need to express. So make sure you take advantage of that. Now it might be easier to see that you've got a distribution happening because we can't go further again. You can't do anything else inside of the parentheses. So again, we now get to distribute. And why? Because we can't do anything else inside the parentheses. Okay. So we take that 4 and we're going to multiply it to the 6x and to the negative 17. So I've got 4 times, here comes that plus here, 4 times. So I've got 4 times the 6x plus 4 times the negative 17. That gives me 4 times 6 is 24x, and if you need to, if you're questioning how I did that, why didn't I multiply the 4 times both the 6 and x? First of all, this is not distribution, okay? We've got all multiplication here. 4 times 6x is the same as 4 times 6 times x. So I can regroup that and look at the 4 times 6 first and get 24 times x, or just the 24x, okay? So that's what's really happening in our brain step by step by step. You want to get to the point where it's happening seamlessly. You're convinced, there's no question. 4 times 6x is just 24x. Then we've got 4 times negative 17, so positive times a negative. Our answer is negative. We're still just adding these things together. So negative 17 times 4 is going to be a negative 68. 4 times 17 is 68. Positive times negative is a negative. And then I'm looking at 24x plus negative 68. It cannot be simplified any further because we don't have matching variables. We've got one with a variable, one without. These cannot be combined. So our final answer, 24x plus a negative 68, or you could write that as 24x minus 68. You could even switch these around right here at the beginning and keep the negative attached to 68 and say negative 68 plus 24x. That would be acceptable as well. All right, let's try number 88. Again, lots going on here. So let's read it out loud, see what's happening. I've got 4 times the quantity, 6x squared minus 3, minus this entire big group right here. Inside the group, I've got going 2 times the smaller group, 5x squared minus 1 plus 1. Okay, so I'm going to focus inside these the parentheses here first. And as I look at them both, I don't have like terms. I have a 6x squared minus 3. Plain old constant 3. I have a 5x squared minus 1, plain old minus 1. So I can't make these any simpler. So my next move is, if I can't do anything else inside the parentheses, I look to see if there's something I can distribute across those parentheses. And indeed there is. I'm going to distribute the 4 across, and inside the brackets I'm going to distribute this 2. Both of these are minuses, okay? So I'm going to take this opportunity to show you 2 different ways to think about these subtractions and distributing over them. One of them is like this first one. I could make this plus a negative 3, and then when I distribute that 4, I'm distributing 4 times 6x squared plus 4 times a negative 3. I get plus the negative 3. 4 times 6x squared plus the negative 3. That's one way to think of it, okay? Now I'm going to bring my minus straight down here. I'm not doing anything with that one yet. I also am going to keep my brackets, and I'm going to keep that +1 over here on the right side, and I'm just going to deal with the distribution of the 2. Now let's look at it just keeping that as a subtraction the whole time. So this time now it's going to be 2 times the 5x squared minus, let's just bring that minus straight down, and now it's just plain old 1 that gets multiplied. Okay. What I see students tend to do is to bring the minus down, then turn around and multiply it again times the 2. Okay, so that's why you have to be careful and be really sure of your steps so you don't bring in or don't bring in more negatives or end up dropping the ones that you're trying to use. Oh, let's see, I need to write in my 5x squared. Okay, so I've done my distribution. Now all the parentheses indicate multiplication. So let's move on from there and do that multiplication. 4 times 6x squared is going to be 4 times 6 is 24x squared. Plus 4 times a -3 is going to be a -12. Minus, so I'm going to bring that minus down here, and I'm going to go ahead and keep this bracket in place. Inside, I've got 2 times 5x squared, that's going to be 2 times 5, which is 10x squared. I've got a minus 2 times 1. You're just subtracting the answer here. This becomes a -2. Okay, so again, I'm just following my same move all the way down here. And then I still have my +1. Guess I should have done the 2 in the blue because those are the new pieces. Okay? All right. Now, I'm looking inside the brackets. I'm still needing to take care of what's inside the brackets there. So 10x squared minus 2 plus 1. I'm going to be combining the minus 2 plus 1. Again, you want to be careful how you do this. You can think of this as, make this a plus a -2 plus 1, or you can think of it as subtracting the 2 plus 1. So you want to be very careful here because you have to go left to right. So you're at -2 and then you move 1 to the right, or 2 minus 1 is 1 and keep the bigger sign. Either way, you should end up at a negative plus a -1 or a -1 inside that bracket here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that here. I've got my 24x squared plus -12. I've got a minus outside, and then inside the brackets here I've got 10x squared minus 1, or plus a -1, however you want to think of that best. And it's kind of getting a little crazy there. I kind of dipped down, so I'm going to refocus here. I've got brackets, that's the last thing in my way, and I've got a minus. I'm subtracting the entire thing right here. So there's still parentheses in the way. I can't combine any of these like terms yet because they're still kind of trapped inside of these brackets or these grouping symbols. But this minus in front here is telling me I'm subtracting this whole thing. Remember, we've been talking about when you see a minus out in front of something, it's really as if you're multiplying by a -1. So it's as if I've got a -1 that's going to be distributed across the 10x squared minus 1. So let's go from that. And I'm doing every single step. You're going to be able to do a lot of this in your head as you get better and better and more confident. I just want you to see every little piece as I go. As I distribute the -1 here, again, you can either think of this as bring the subtraction down, and you've got negative times a positive, or make this plus a negative, and then you've got a plus negative times a negative, okay? Either way, in the end result, you're going to end up with a +1 when it's all said and done, okay? Because you've got -1 times 10x squared, so that's going to be a -10x squared. Then you've got a -1 minus a 1, or subtracting, okay, if I just bring that subtraction straight down, then I've got -1 times 1, okay? Or if you want to think of that as plus a -1 from the beginning, and then you multiply by the -1, you've got plus a +1, okay? So in the end, we have 24x squared plus a -12 plus a -10x. This plus came straight down, the negative got distributed to the 10x squared, negative 10x squared. We've got a minus negative 1 times 1, which eventually will turn into a minus a negative 1 is going to be, can be rewritten as plus a positive 1. The reason why I'm going for all addition here is so I can move things around as needed. I've got like terms, 24x squared and a negative 10x squared. Notice because they're all pluses here, I can just start moving things around to where I want them. So I'm going to switch around these negative 12s and the negative 10x squared so that my 24x squared plus my negative 10x squared are next to each other. Again, there's going to be a lot of times where you're going to be able to do this in your head and just pull these things out. But now I can really see I've got like terms, exactly matching variables and exponents. So 24x squared plus a negative 10x squared, different signs, one's positive, one's negative. I subtract, 24 minus 10 is 14x squared. Keep the sign of the bigger, it's 14x squared. Plus negative 12 plus a positive 1, different signs, 12 minus 1 is 11. Keep the bigger, so we've got 14x squared plus a negative 11, or you could write that as 14x squared minus 11. Either one is fine. Again, I show every little kind of step that my brain goes through. You may not need to show that much, okay? Just trying to help you follow along. Feel free to run these by me or ask questions again in class so that we can clarify anything that's bugging you. Okay, I've got 2 for you to choose from on the try problems, and totally your choice, or you can go for both, but hit pause and then come back for the answers. Number 84, you should end up with negative 5y minus 5, and then number 86, you should end up with 10y minus 54. Okay, and we will see you on our last page, page 4.